So this is how to install Fang MCB from a bare bones installation. So if you've been following through, you're aware that this is just a virtual machine where all I did was just update all of the packages, sudo apt update, sudo apt upgrade, and now I'm here. So if you are logged in, I would recommend putting SSH if you create a fork. And so what is a fork? A fork is just your custom version. So for me, I archive kind of like the old fun branches from like last season for archival purposes. For your case, you're going to be doing a more traditional fork in the sense of we'll do Jose's. So he's had actually some of his commits merged into Fang Robotics MCB. But then if you go here, there'll be a tab that says SSH. Do that link, and if you have set up SSH for GitHub, good. If you haven't, well, it's the only way that you can edit stuff that you can upload changes to GitHub. Gone are the days where you just type your password or store it in an insecure text file. I guess it got so out of hand that GitHub was just kind of like, screw it. But we'll copy the HTTPS, then cd documents, and I'm gonna go through and read the instructions because I understand some of you have not worked with shell, and that's all right. So cd GitHub, go to your documents folder, and wherever you place GitHub repos, let's make a document a folder. So make dir GitHub, cd GitHub. Right, so now we're in GitHub. So git clone, and then you can do recursive, but the reason why git module update is shown is just when you're switching between branches with different submodule versions, you have to use git submodule update. But we'll do that. So git clone. Oh. So if you don't have Git installed, which is usually just assumed on GitHub, I mean, they'll just say you don't have Git installed, install Git, so, just install Git. So sometimes there's a saying in Dione Fortune's Psychic Self-Defense, which sounds a bit off topic, but she talked about how people would be doing these metaphysical procedures without the background knowledge, and she compared it to if you're doing surgery, you're taught certain things which you do before executing a procedure, which is not usually said in the instructions, like wash your hands, use a certain solution, put on personal protection, not just for yourself, but for the patient. Usually it's kind of like cut here, cut there. But if you don't do the stuff beforehand, the patient's infected. And I mean, I have to cite my sources, and it was from Dione Fortune, and it sounds like some Harry Potter person, but what's interesting about her is that she did work in psychiatry and mental health. So she does write in her book that there are not everything can be solved with magic. Some people literally just have a mental ailment, and you should use psychiatric means to alleviate that. Which is kind of refreshing, and also just kind of points to how her work's a bit more grounded. It has a little bit of the classic Victorian race theory, whatever, but I mean, that was common with a lot of Victorian works, like even like what I think Jack London, or something. He wrote White Fang, the novels. So, but in terms of magical works, I found, I guess, hers one of the more grounded and of historical importance because it's like Golden Dawn. But you came here to program, not to learn about the history of magic within the Western world. or the Eastern world. I would recommend looking into both if you're into that. Not only that, because like J.K. Rowling does draw a lot from actual magical works. So, I would say, pay homage to I guess your source material, but it's like 9 a.m. bro. So we do git clone. So the reason why I said that was because there are certain things when you're learning that are just kind of, it's assumed you're going to do it anyways. Like if you're a surgeon, you're going to wash your hands. So if you are a programmer on GitHub, you're going to have Git installed. It just, it just doesn't make, it's just, it's a bit redundant to just put install Git if you don't have Git installed. And usually it'll tell you to install Git. So git clone, Fang Robotics MCB, then and there. So after you do git submodule update, and on the first time you have to do init recursive. Once you do that, you don't have to do it anymore. You can just say git submodule update. Notice there's several libraries, and only that, there's libraries within the libraries. So yeah, it is, I will say that, I guess to underscore the point, it is important to start taking note of these, I guess, given procedures, or just assume that you're going to do it as a programmer, because it's not going to tell you everything. Not every project is going to give you a video of how it's installed. To be honest, most programmers aren't the best at writing documentation. I mean, right now, in terms of writing deep documentation, we just have dependency injection, and that's it. So I would say that, it is going to be hard, but the more you do it, the more you can overcome. And only that, when you are given partial instructions, or instructions that are relatively even more partial, you can figure out what to do on your own. Because you might not even, well, usually they tell you how to compile, but you might literally just have to click through, and then you see, oh, it has an S construct. That means you run scons to compile it. And I'm in the school of, like, you should probably write how to use your code, but they're not gonna. So, just like Dione Fortune, an IRL magician, or I forgot which term she preferred, wrote, learn the regular procedures that aren't written down, and things will go a lot more easily. So now we're here, and so let's see what it says. So push access, right? So this is the SSH link. The reason why is that when it uses this protocol, it has more security. This one is kind of like if you're just playing around with the code. So cd Fang Robotics MCB, we're in there. Git submodule update. So cd build util environment, and if you press tab, usually, boom, it finishes for you. So then ubuntu environment install.sh, and while this is running, we're gonna do arw edu. I really just did a whole ass analogy on how to, I guess, the importance of these kind of unspoken rules or unspoken procedures, but and tied it into some ancient magical history. But if that doesn't help you remember the importance, then I don't think much will. So we'll do this, git clone. And so notice how it doesn't even tell you git clone. Wow. So we do that. Right? cd arw edu. And then readme. I think the wiki. Is there even a wiki? Yeah, so the documentation is kind of sparse. Wait. So this is October 23, 3 years ago. Yeah, roughly 3 years ago. I'm actually gonna use this. So rm/r. So be careful with RF because it will delete whatever you tell it to delete, and it's really difficult. There's no trash bin in the command line. So git clone. So here's another unspoken thing. So this is a mirror. UW, notice how this is more developed. UW likes GitLab. A lot of other teams use GitHub. So not all mirrors are completely in sync, so just remember that. If you read here, get started with the tutorials, AirWedu wiki, and boom. You got that. I would recommend doing this. If you want to do this, sure. Adding a new robot type. That one is, I would say, yeah, do that as well if you can. So it is kind of difficult, not gonna lie, to type with like a microphone in front of me. So have that there. It's still running. So now it's installing Python. So let's see. Install nvim vim/y. Really? Oh, sudo apt install neovim. So the command for neovim is nvim. Would recommend it over vim. If you know how to use vim, if you know how to use neovim, you can use vim. Vice versa. It's just neovim has a lot better features, a lot more features. So we go nvim. So if we see here, first it installs the requirements and then the other requirements for Python. And then this is a custom compiler for embedded. If you run this multiple times, it will keep spamming your path. So just a heads up. Python version manager, it's called pyenv. And then this installs 3.8.10, which is the favorite for the devs. And let's see. Gmock, I think, yeah. So Ubuntu has the most recent version of Gmock, which is Gmock 3.17. So another thing is, if things go wrong, another unspoken rule, look into the build scripts, and also before installing a build script, especially if it tells you to do sudo something.sh, because it could delete your whole installation and it will be a pain to recover it. Usually on GitHub, they're good at kind of preventing that from even getting out, but it can happen. So yeah, and also fun thing is like Dione Fortune goes into like how these people, for example, the spell just teaches them how to summon something, but there's an unspoken rule that if you summon something, you have to also banish it. If they don't know that, stuff goes down, crap hits the nuclear turbine. Let's see. So now, what does it say? We go cd. So the dots just mean the directory above this directory. So if you'll see, I'll go to go up 1, then 2. Boom. cd Fang MCB project, and then pip end shell. scons profile equals debug /j12 build. And I notice anything after these hashes just means that this is a comment. This is not executed code. You can see. So I'm actually going to cancel this job and run tests. Another unspoken rule when working with GitHub is git status. So let's see which version we're on. So we're in the release branch. There's the main branch. Release is usually the one you want to work on, and then whichever version is being developed. Note that just because it says release, if it's in this branch for our repo at least, I know Blender might do it a bit different because sometimes they want to have multiple versions in development in parallel. If it's in this branch, it is not a final version. A final version is on main. So after that is done, note how it kind of does this last thing where it's pip and install. So Control Shift C. If you say Control C terminates the shell script. So cd ARWIG project. Let's see where it goes. Yeah. So then pip Control V. Copy. Let's see if it'll paste. Yeah, so nvim allows you to do that. Install. And the other thing is, so if you don't do the requirements.txt, I guess now we're having two things run at once. Also, J12 just means how many jobs in parallel. And so that means it's trying to use all 12 CPU cores, which is, starting to cause things to freeze. Rule in programming, so sometimes there's another unspoken thing. So Linux generally errs on the side of if it's not failing or no errors are happening, don't say anything because the error messages could get buried. So if an error occurs, that's usually when stuff like, the copy command will actually output stuff to the command line. Some people take issue with this because, they ask like, is my thing working, etc. Okay. So we're just going to wait. If this does freeze beyond repair, just note that pretty much the second step is just to run the installation of the requirements.txt, which is within the Ubuntu build script, and you should be done. Chances are this is either going to crash because of a lack of RAM, because this is a virtual machine, or this is going to unfreeze after like 5 minutes. If you don't want to deal with speed issues, I would recommend just doing a dual boot. There's a lot of tutorials of how to do that. Be careful when resizing your Windows partition because, especially if it's under BitLock or whatever, it can cause Windows to not recognize itself. Usually that's why it's recommended you delete Windows, install Ubuntu, and then install Windows in where Windows was. Is it even maybe... So let's let's see. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna restart, force a shutdown, and then we'll recover the installation. So check this out. We do that. We're going to terminal and oh, perfect. So cd so and vim. So all I'm doing is right click, copy, and then paste. Control V. And then run pip install. So pip is the Python package manager, and then /r. It's just, I guess, for requirements. So paste. Oh. I guess there are no Python requirements.txt. Let's see if it will run. If it doesn't, well, it does. So I guess we're good. Actually, let's not do that. Final thing is to install VS Code. So you just literally, and then do this, install that, and Linux, I'll install cd. This is, the tilde means your home directory. So if you see, kind of has all of that stuff. So cd downloads, or cd downloads takes you to the same place. And sudo apt install. You will need this. This means the current where I'm at, and then we use / to / separate directory names, and then code. You press tab to autocomplete. Y. You give Microsoft your soul. Not really, because this one's open source, so people can't tell if Microsoft is actually stealing your data. Sure. And last but not least, don't worry about this. This doesn't affect the installation. So you have to do code. So if I do ls/a, notice how it has a .vs code directory. It needs to be done from this directory. So code dot, and so that's for AREW edu, cd document GitHub, cd Fang Robotics MCB, code dot, ls/a. Notice also says .vs code. I trust the authors. You kind of have to. And there you go. And if you do Control-Shift-P, run tasks, build, release, boom. The same thing for our repository, Control-Shift-P, run tasks. The other thing that you should note is select configuration, typing Control-Shift-P configuration, or select, let's see. Oh, install the recommended extensions. I guess you need the extension C++. Install. They'll install it, and then you'll be able to do select configuration. The reason why select configuration is important is that if you are working in the test folder, it will give an error if you do not use yes, just say yes to everything. Don't install in the dev container, so that's with Dockers. We don't mess with Dockers. Well, we do, but we don't use it to dev because it's difficult to upload code from a Docker container because it's like a mini virtual machine. So see, select configuration, test. So if I click test, it's now good, but it might not be good for elsewhere. So, and then configuration task, hardware. Sim is, we don't use sim. Hardware is when you are working with actually uploading with like this stuff. And then you can also do run task, build, release. I would recommend debug. That has all the debug statements. Release has all of the safety guards removed to run slightly faster. But for the most part, so let's say competition's happening and an error is happening and you don't have much time, use release and hope it doesn't trigger that. There is a specific sound the robot makes that's like this frequency goes like duh. It is, I believe, 250 or 500 hertz, or at least it attempts to with the buzzer. But the point is, if you hear that sound, that pitch, that means an assertion was triggered, and or an error was triggered, and chances are it could be an assertion. So release disables assertions. The reason why we have assertions is because that means the code is doing something that should never happen. Like if I say that the speed should be 0, it should be 0. And if it isn't 0, even though the input is 0, then an assertion triggers. Usually that's only tested for the unit test, but if we go here to like, where is it? Chassis, drive, quad drive. Let's actually, chassis, drive, holonomic, command. If we go to field drift command, there'll be something called a Fang assert. Fang assert means that when it's in a test, it uses the regular assertion, but when it is uploaded to hardware, it uses the embedded assertion. But notice that it says that this cannot be negative. And if you see that, so this is just verifying the configuration values, is that there's just things that should never happen. It's also, I believe, is noted in the Doxygen that it shouldn't be negative, but these are just great ways to catch bugs, because if your inputs are flipped, it could be this, it could be here, you could add accidentally a negative sign or forget to add a negative sign. So these will tell you which file, which line, and why it was triggered. And you can work backwards from there. So that is how you set up Fang Robotics MCB as well as ARUW Edu.